I wanted to make this video about perfectionism because making banana fish recently, I think I've learned a thing or two about the idea of what's perfect, and that's what I want to share. The thing that I think I've learned about perfect is that it's not actually so important, and I think that the idea that you have to do something perfectly is actually the thing that's getting in a lot of people's way. If you're painting or you're drawing or you're making a sculpture or you're knitting a blanket or anything, I think you have an idea in your head about what you want it to look like, but I think the problem comes in when this idea is a little bit too rigid and it doesn't allow you the flexibility to explore at all in the process of creating it. This idea probably came from something that you saw that inspired you to start creating, but I think feeling like you need to stick to that idea is the thing that ends up limiting people. For a lot of people, I think perfectionism starts to creep in even before they begin whatever it is they want to work on, because there's a voice in their head that's telling them like, oh, you're not good enough to do it, it'll never look like that, oh, you haven't got the skills to accomplish something that will look exactly like you want it to look. But I think that just prevents people from trying, and that idea of it needing to look exactly like you see it in your mind is the thing that sabotages people before they even begin. I think the thing that intimidates people is that when you have this idea of what will be perfect in your head, there are so many opportunities for failure, but there's only one opportunity for success. And so being able to just hit the bullseye with your attempt is intimidating because it's more likely that you will, miss with your shot. I also think there's a lot of people who give up halfway because they have enough confidence to get started and keep trying, but about halfway through they realize that this is not looking like that one image they have in their head that would be perfect, and so they either give up or they finish and just end up not liking it. And I think a lot of people will end up finishing something, but they'll end up not being happy with it, which is fine. However, I think there's a way to think about your creativity or whatever it is you're trying to do that allows more room for you to like the final product. Because if you're striving for perfection, and there's only one definition of what perfection means in that case, then anything outside of that is a failure. And if you kind of broaden your scope a little bit, maybe it will allow you to be satisfied with, multiple final products instead of just that one that you were imagining. And I don't think that you necessarily need to love the final product in order to not be a perfectionist. I think that finishing something and realizing that it's not what you wanted and then trying again is not perfectionism. I think that it's growth. And I actually think that that is the most important part. I don't think it's about achieving perfection. I think it's about striving for it. And so if you keep striving for perfection and you keep improving and getting better, I think that's more valuable than achieving that perfect thing that you're striving for. Because with every attempt that you make and fail, and with every mistake that you make, you have grown a little bit better or a little bit more confident or a little bit more skilled, and then the next attempt you know what went wrong on the last attempt, and you're armed with that for future attempts, which makes you better positioned for success, or to at least like the final product more than you did the last one. For a long time, when I was making banana fish, I would always draw them on the computer, and this really trained me to be a perfectionist, and it was a bad habit that was kind of hard to break. Because when you're drawing something on the computer, you have infinite tries because you can always just delete and start again. Also, if you draw a stroke and it's not the way that you want it, you can just pick it up and fine-tune it and make it perfect endlessly. Whereas if you're doing a painting or you're doing a drawing, you kind of only have one try, and then after that one try, you have to stick with it. Maybe you can do some alterations, but it's not like on the computer where you can endlessly fidget with it until it's perfect. I think the perfection that I was seeing from the digital banana fish as well is something that doesn't even translate into real life. Whenever I would make these paintings that look just like digital drawings, I wouldn't really like them because they don't have any sort of character or spontaneity. They weren't very interesting or unique, and if the image in my head is of a digital banana fish and I'm drawing one with my hands, of course it's not going to be perfect. And so the image that I was striving for is kind of just unattainable, and no matter what, I was going to be dissatisfied with the banana fish I was making because I was trying to do a digital drawing, but in real life. So of course I'm going to be disappointed. I think the way that I kind of broke this habit, although I don't think I've broken it completely, of course everyone has these tendencies to always be critical of themselves, but what I started doing was working with stencils and spray paint, because the stencil would allow me to keep the shape of the banana fish that I wanted as I had designed it on the computer. It would keep the lines as well, but the spray paint would add some spontaneity and some mystery and surprise to it that I couldn't plan for. So basically I would plan the entire work of art up until the stencil, and then after I removed the stencil I wouldn't really know what I was going to get. And I think that that mentality can kind of help you to step away from this perfectionism. When you plan for there to be some unplanned parts, then when something unplanned happens, it's not a surprise, it's not a disappointment. Especially since unplanned things always happen, there's no way to avoid them. If you plan for those unplanned things, then it's just a part of the plan. Plan. If you plan for things, plan for something to be unplanned, then when unplanned things inevitably happen, you won't be disappointed by them because it was always a part of the plan. I think making ceramic banana fish has also really trained me to not be such a perfectionist, because especially with the glazes, the colors before you fire them of the glazes are not really indicative of what it's going to look like in the end. And especially at higher temperatures, the glazes really flow and melt in ways that you can't predict. And so you never really know what you're going to get until you open the kiln and you see, oh, this is the final product. And I think that mentality of having a certain part of the plan be unplanned produces the best results. Because I actually think it's all of these little incongruities and mistakes that make an artwork good. And that's why I didn't like the paintings that I made that tried to look like digital banana fish. When the stencil oversprays, or when something that gets stuck together, or when a line goes in a way that I had not planned, that actually makes the artwork more interesting. It gives it more character and it's more unique. And this is also the feedback I've gotten as well. There have been so many times where I'll produce a drawing or a ceramic or some kind of artwork of a banana fish, and I'll think, oh, this is crappy because I can see everything that is wrong with it according to this image I've got in my head. But other people actually like it for those same qualities because they can't see that image that's in my head that this is based off of. And so whereas I can see the ways that it went wrong, other people just think that it is unique and has character for all of these kind of inconsistencies. And if you think about the artist or the art that you like as well, those are usually the ones that are the most memorable to you. Like, I really have a lot of appreciation for someone who can paint a portrait of someone that looks exactly true to reality, but the artists that I find the most interesting are the ones who have a vision in their head and they're trying to show other people because it's something that only they can see. And looking at their art, you're getting a glimpse into something that no one else has seen before. It's not like the world that we see every day. It's not like a photo. It's different. It's special. It's unique. I think you can plan for things to be unplanned, but I also think that a little bit of confidence goes a long way. There's a big difference between a confident brush stroke and a questioning one. And so if while you're creating something you're stressing about getting it right the whole time, it will show in what you're creating and that stress will come through. Whereas if you're kind of flexible and open to the variety of ways that things could go, that will also show in whatever you're creating, whether you're painting or sewing or drawing, because you know, the stress comes through, people can tell. Wouldn't it be lovely if the first time that we tried something, it was perfect every single time? Like when you say it like that, it just sounds so ridiculous, and I think what people are often not realizing when they see something amazing that inspires them to also create is that there are so many failed attempts and mistakes that led up to that successful one. And so your journey with whatever you're creating is going to be the same. You can't just jump the line and, achieve perfection right away without all of the trials and tribulations that come before. And I don't think you need to think of it as like, oh, I'll suffer through all of the mistakes and failures so that I can finally get it right. I think the failing and the making mistakes can also be gratifying and fun. And the reason why I bring this up is because I think this is one of the things that art can also teach us about life. I think that everything I've said about being a perfectionist when it comes to making art is also the case for just life in general. And the reason why I bring this up is because I think this is one of the things that art can also teach us about life. I think that everything I've said about being a perfectionist when it comes to making art is also the case for just life in general. I think that if you're stressed out about having the perfect life, just the way that you imagine it in your head, it's gonna come through in the things that you do every day that might end up sabotaging you. I think that you can plan for a certain amount of your life, but then I think you should leave part of it to be unplanned. And that will allow you to like your life however it ends up being, because there's not only one acceptable version of success. You can find success in a variety of ways. I think that perfectionism teaches us to see every mistake and every error as a failure. But I actually think that every mistake and every failure is just one step on the road to success, because now you know what not to do, right? I think perfectionism teaches us to look at our life like there's only one acceptable image that we should all be striving for. And I don't think that we should not strive for excellence, but I think that a little bit of flexibility as we strive for that excellence will allow us to like however our life ends up being. Because I think that even if you fall short of whatever you are imagining as perfection, I think you can still find gratitude and be happy with that. Would you rather be 70% happy or 0% happy? If you fall short of something by 30%, the 70% that you did find success with can still bring gratitude and can still make you happy. And you can be thankful that things went partly right. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Would you rather be 30% happy or 0% happy? Personally, I will take the 30% over nothing, because maybe the next attempt I will get 50% or 70%. If you're 99% successful at something, but you're just missing one little percentile, is that going to prevent you from feeling happy with yourself? I guess what I'm saying is that having things turn out only partly as planned does not negate the part that did go as planned, and I think that you are allowed to be happy with that. I think it's worth saying yet again that there are so many ways that your life can look, just like there are so many ways that an artwork can turn out. And even though you might see what didn't go right, I think most people watching wouldn't even know. And so does it really matter in the end, as long as you're finding fulfillment? I think that an artist who is so stressed about achieving perfection will never see the beauty in things that go wrong. And I think that there's actually a lot of beauty to be found there. I think that if you live every day fretting that you're not doing it perfectly, then you're kind of sabotaging yourself from enjoying all of the things that you have already done right. I think the banana fish have taught me to manage my perfectionism and to just go with the flow and be happy with whatever you end up getting. I think that, like a work of art, everyone's life is unique, and I think that uniqueness comes from all of those imperfections and mistakes that happen along the way. And so if you're struggling with perfectionism and you're trying to be perfect at everything that you do, I think maybe if you squint a little bit at that image in your mind that is telling you that it needs to be exactly like this, I think you might be able to see and be happy with a variety of outcomes, even if they're not perfect after all.